Still, it's April 5th, 4th period, 2011. And I'm going to try to show you my thinking by saying it out loud. Please listen quietly, don't respond, try not to talk so that other people can make sure they hear everything that I'm thinking about when I think through the lab. Okay, first, I'm looking at the beginning paragraph, and I'm making sense of it because it says some stuff about a soccer ball. That means Mr. Schmidt's trying to say something to me about soccer balls. And soccer balls, I know they don't roll forever. That's silly. I also know from class and from my own personal experience that energy isn't created or destroyed. But really, I don't know that from experience. It almost always seems like energy disappears. Why do balls stop rolling? I mean, all of this is theoretical to me, so I don't really know for sure. But maybe I can experiment here and understand where this energy is going somehow in this experiment. He is asking me to write a project about it, to write a reflection about it, so I'm going to have to think it through, make sure I know what's going on. The essential question, there seem to be two essential questions. How does energy transform when an object slides or rolls? Or why does something stop on its own? It seems like these essential questions are linked. Usually when Mr. Schmidt writes two of them, he's got some sort of sense of what's going on here. Maybe they're the same. Let me look. We're talking about energy transforming when an object rolls, and why does something stop on its own? Well, I'm thinking if energy transforms, that means that energy is changing forms from one form to another, and that would cause an object to stop rolling anyway. So I'm guessing for my project I can answer both essential questions, or either one, and it would be about the same. I'm guessing that's why there's two there. We'll see. I'll talk it over with my group members later. Investigative question. Usually when I read an investigative question, it's more specific to the experiment. So the experiment in this case has to do with rolling surface and energy transformation. Surface and energy transformation. How does the surface affect the energy transformation? When I read that carefully, I'm thinking, I bet I'm going to change the surface and see how it affects the rolling car. From my own personal experience, I can think of the times when I've tried to roll little matchbox cars on carpet when I was a little kid. It just doesn't work. And I do remember rolling matchbox cars across the kitchen floor, and they roll really far. Maybe that has something to do with it, this question. Maybe if I change the rolling surface, I will change how the energy is transformed, because when I roll across the floor of the classroom, I picture that car would roll for a long way before all of its energy would disappear. Procedure starter. I'm thinking something about a matchbox car, and it says something about different surfaces will make the energy transformation obvious. So I guess I'm on the right track when I'm thinking that I'm going to be changing the surface that the car rolls on and seeing how far it goes. The hard part is, and I'm wondering myself, how am I going to know how much energy the car started with? Because, I mean, pushing it with my hand, I could push it harder or slower, and I might not be sure how much energy I started with. And in this investigation, it seems like I want all of the investigations to start with the same amount of energy. Oh, well, that answers it. In the first sentence of the procedure, it says, I suggest making a ramp. My guess is if I made the same kind of ramp every time, that the car would always have the same amount of starting energy. I know that I can figure out how much energy is stored in a car by calculating its gravitational potential energy. And I know from class that weight is equal to the force times acceleration. My mistake. The mass times acceleration. That's the weight. And if I know that I've lifted the car off the ground a certain height, then the force times the height would be equal to the work, which I know is a form of energy. So it seems like if I put these concepts together, I would know how much energy the car starts with every time. If I can keep that energy the same every time, then I know for sure that the car starts with the right amount of energy. And how far it rolls would tell me how quickly the energy is transformed. I think the way I'm going to proceed is with my hypothesis, I will keep the ramp the same and keep the car the same and change the rolling surface and see how far it goes. That's an independent variable and a dependent variable. Oh, I always get them mixed up. Independent variable is the thing I change, because it starts with I. And dependent variable is the thing I measure that depends on the independent variable. So my independent variable would be rolling surface. My dependent variable would be how far the object rolls before it stops. The control, I'm not sure about that. I'll talk it over with my group later. I already thought through the procedure. Looking at the data table, yeah, look, I got the surface type, I've got the ramp height, I've got the initial GPE, and I'm guessing I might want to make some observations. But other than that, oh, distance. I probably would want to include a data section for distance. I'll talk to my group mates about that when we start it. Looking down later on this other part of the lab, the analysis and conclusion are almost always the same for all my experiments, so I probably just think about that later after I've thought about the lab some more. Helpful hints, consider how does energy transform? What are some of the other forms? I remember from my reading and discussion in class and some of my practice questions that energy transformations into heat are really common. My guess is that's going to be a major factor. I just can't imagine actually measuring the heat given off by a car that stops rolling. Well, maybe Mr. Schmidt will help us out with that later. We'll see. I think I've thought through the whole lab. Me and my partners could devise a procedure from this experiment. Pretty sure. I feel good about it. Thank you.